Thank you for being here.
You.
Yay!
Thank you.
You are a beautiful audience. Thank you. From our heart to your hearts, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you very, very
Yes,
much. It's a
really.
privilege.
Thank you. Thank you.
The ability and the willingness to just go for it and do what there is to be done to fulfill your dream and to be willing to take the hard knocks that may come with that is kind of the theme of what we're talking about here today anyhow.
Right. How many of you think of yourselves as people who, for you, you can do anything? Anything is possible. Great. And that is going to be pretty much the theme of what we're about to talk about. And so I want you to put all your purses down and take everything off your laps and come with me on a journey. There was once a young girl, and when she was about 4 years old, she couldn't wait until all of her siblings were off to school. That's when she had her mom all to herself. She followed her mother everywhere, well, almost everywhere, and sat fascinated watching her every move as she put on makeup, dressed, cooked, and talked on the phone, hanging on to her words, her voice, her smell, and her. To the young girl, her mom was the goddess. Everything a woman could be and should be, and the girl wanted to be just like her. When the mother was out of the house, the girl imitated being her, playing dress up with her older sister. She would wear her mother's clothes, shoes, and jewelry. The young girl didn't notice until years later that playing as her mom, pretending to be her mom, in some ways, she became her. Of course, she didn't actually become quite like her mom. There were still things that were different about her in many ways. But as she grew older, she began to notice that living in her were those parts of her mom that she most admired. Her mom was her greatest fan, listening carefully to all her stories and jokes and dreams. She constantly told the little girl, "You are smart, funny, and beautiful. You have a good heart. And most important," she always told her, "You can do anything." The young girl believed her, of course, and she began to live her life according to those beliefs. You can do anything. Believing that anything is possible, she ventured unprotected into life and often found herself in difficult circumstances that a more cautious girl, perhaps, would have avoided. Things happened, hurtful things, that made her feel ashamed, alone, angry. Things she couldn't tell her mom. She couldn't tell anyone. And for years, she couldn't even tell herself. The little girl went into hiding. A young lady now, she stopped hanging on to her mother. Now her mother's voice and words sounded controlling and critical. She started avoiding her mother to shut out the look of concern and worry in her eyes. At 16, she left her country and her home and her family for a foreign land. Relieved to finally be on her own, attending boarding school and starting a whole new life away from her mother's critical eyes and her voice, she was free. She set out to accomplish success, fame, beauty, intelligence. And she was funny too. She thought, I can do anything. And she did. To the outside world, she had it all. Time passed, and she accomplished all her dreams. But she still avoided her mother's eyes. Time passed quickly. And one time when she was in her 30s, her parents came for a visit in her new home in LA. One evening, after yet another date, she came home angry, disappointed, and complaining. After she had finished a lengthy dissertation on her date's many flaws and shortcomings, her mom listened to her patiently, and she finally said, "No one is going to be right for you until you are right with yourself." Suddenly, she blew up at her mom, listing loudly and angrily all her accolades and accomplishments and awards. How could she say those things to me? As she was shouting, her mother came closer and approached her. Holding her face in her hands, she raised her head, looked straight into her eyes, and said, "Why then are you so unhappy?" The girl stood still. She could no longer avoid her mother's eyes. And for the first time in 28 years, she started to talk. And as she spoke, her tears started flowing. And she told her mother everything. Everything she had been holding back. It started with being molested at the age of 6, being bulimic since the age of 11, being raped at 16, having 2 abortions, and the abusive relationships, the lies, the headaches, the heartaches, and the shame. She spoke as if her life depended on it. She couldn't have known this at the time, but it did. Her life depended on that conversation. When she stopped talking, her mother gently kissed her forehead, said goodnight, and went to bed. The girl sat there for a moment alone, and for the first time since she was 4, she felt peaceful again. The next day, she woke up as if she had found a new life in herself. Gone was that lump in her throat, the heaviness in her eyes. She looked herself in the mirror for the first time in 28 years, and she found herself looking back. She was there. And as she came out into the living room to greet her mom, she was shocked. Because what she found was her mother falling to pieces under the weight of what she was sharing. The mother cried and grieved over not knowing all that had happened to her little girl. She struggled to grasp why this girl, who was the light of her life, had shut her out all these years. and carried this weight alone. All these years, this girl had been wrapped up in her self-loathing, her self-pity, holding it together. She never thought about her mother. She was so busy hiding, not letting the world see her, or the pain, or the shame. Now they talked, and they talked. For hours into the night, they kept talking and sharing and crying, hungrily, grasping every minute together, as if it was the last and the first. They climbed and clawed through every conversation, their way back to each other. You see, all the therapy and self-help she had done up to then, it healed but a little of the wound. Nothing had bridged the gap of her dissatisfied femininity as did those days with her mother. She learned the biggest lesson of her life then, that her mother is the source of all her goodness. This is her birthplace as a woman. You cannot be disconnected from that which gave you birth. Being cut off and separated from her mother had cost her ever experiencing love, being happy, being healthy, being alive. All those accomplishments didn't touch her soul one bit until that day. Yes. You should see your faces. You're beautiful. Brave woman, yes?
How many times have we cut ourselves off from the source of our power, the source of our knowledge, the source of our wisdom? It's appropriate to strike out on your own. It's appropriate to stand alone sometimes. And it's appropriate to always know and acknowledge your source. To attempt to lead others without being led yourself by a higher source is folly. So I'd like to hear from some of the people in the audience.
Maybe some reactions,
Yeah.
maybe some feelings.
What did that open up for you? What's there for you as a man and a woman, you know? I mean, this was a story about a girl, but it's a story about human beings. It's a story about coming home to where you belong. And it's a story about hidden shame and the healing that's possible when you face that. You know, sometimes that's the fight you have to go back and finish. Mm-hmm. And it's a risk you could lose. Mm-hmm. Little secret, it always works out.
It does.
You can't mess this up.
Yeah.
So, you know, you really can't mess this up. When you go back and reconnect with your source, you go back and clear the things that you've been hiding, the things that you've been ashamed of, or the things that have happened. You share it with another human being who, remember, maybe at another time in another show, I talked about unconditional love. One place that you're pretty safe to find that is in your connection with your mother. Mm-hmm. It's a pretty good bet. It's a pretty good bet. I would bet on that. You know, if somebody's gonna like love you and forgive you no matter what you do, mm-hmm. that would be her. She may not like some of the things that you've done, but that would be the one place to find forgiveness and to forgive yourself and your connection with whatever you call God or source, that thing which gives us life, and when it's gone, they say you're dead. You know, that thing, whatever it is that you relate to in your own life, that you might call your own spirituality or your own spiritual connection with all there is. What's opened up for you? What do you see? What did you get from that story?
Some of you
Let's
are
have a
touched.
dialogue.
Yes, please. Please.
Thank you for sharing the story. It was definitely a great story to listen to. Basically, what I have learned from this story is when you're disconnected from yourself and from your soul, you're disconnected from the world, and nothing is possible. And you're not in the right place, not in the right time. No matter how you put effort into what you want to accomplish, you will not be successful until you connect to yourself.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this story.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks.
definitely.
Let's give her a hand for
Yeah.
speaking up. Go ahead and pass it. Who else
Yeah,
would like to
just
please
grab the mic.
please share with us
Your reactions.
what opened up? Just what did you
Anything you
see?
have to say is good. Hi.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Right up here.
As she said, it was a very touching story, and it shows when you hold something into yourself and you are hiding and you have a secret, it's like a heavy weight on your shoulder. And when you open up and when you try to not being hidden anymore, it's like you're free.
Mm-hmm.
You're free of everything. You can't do anything after that. Just that heavy weight is gonna fall, and you can be free for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's like the risk you're taking right now, yes? Grabbing that mic. At first, it seems like such a hard thing to do. Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
And then the minute you speak, it's just like any other conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it's talking, taking a risk, willing to say what's there for you in your own soul.
Yeah.
You know, sharing it. Anybody else would like to say something?
Let's give her a hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told you can't mess this up.
Yes, please. Right up here.
Hi, I could relate to this story from both ends, as this is my mom.
Yes.
The stuff I pulled on her, what I put her through, with my challenges, whatever I challenged her with, and then the challenges that I'm facing as a mom with my daughter. And sorry, I'm going to lose it again.
Please do. I lose it every time I read this story.
I hope that I hope one day I have the privilege of my daughter coming back and giving me the opportunity to be there for her, because I know she's suffering. And I just have to be patient for the right time.
Yes.
But yeah, that's where it touched me.
Yeah.
I was touched because I could remember what happened with her, and unfortunately it makes me feel like a failure as a mom. That maybe I didn't do something to make her feel comfortable to confide in me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's such a great point. Thank you so much.
You said something that particularly touched me, was that it would be a privilege, would it not? It's a privilege to share another person's life. It's a privilege to participate in the transformation and healing of another person, and of course, especially with your own children and your own parents. That's the closest to home. We, as a couple, have chosen to do on a worldwide basis, on a community basis, is to, we said to each other one day, what if the world is our family? What if you are our brothers and sisters, our children, and our parents? And what if wherever we go, we're always at home with our family, And wouldn't it be a privilege to relate to the world like that? And if I don't, who will? If you don't, who will? And if not now, when? You know, so we invite you to relate to all of the world as your mothers and your daughters, your brothers, your sons and your fathers, and take what you've gotten here and heal the world. Because I've never met a human being that hasn't had something to hide, that hasn't had something that hurt too much to share, that didn't need someone to talk to. So you could be that person. Each and every one of us could be that person for those people, and they'll just show up. You don't have to go looking for them. You know, they'll just show up, and you'll know when it's time. If you can come into the world with, I'm a place where it's safe. I'm a place where love can happen. And you never know. Sometimes you're speaking to a stranger, and somewhere else, a stranger may be speaking to your daughter.
And so I also, I think that's such an important question that a parent would ask. You know, I was on the radio the other night. I was doing a show, and it was about lying, right? And can you imagine doing a show on Iranian radio on lying? It's like the thing we do the most, and yet the thing we think we have the right to do the most, and then the thing we lie about the most. I don't lie, I never lie, right? But then we're always complaining about who? All the other liars in our lives, right? So then this one person calls and says, you know, could you please tell my parents to stop lying? And I was like, okay, great, I'd be glad to do that. What should I tell them to stop lying about? And she said, well, tell them to stop lying about the fact that they have favorites amongst their children. I said, okay. And then if I did that, what would happen, right? And she said, well, what would happen is that they would admit that they favor my brother or my sister or some other child. And I said, great. And then what would happen? She said, well, that's never going to happen. They're never going to admit they're such liars, right? But the whole point was that don't we want to blame our parents? Don't we want it to be their fault? Don't we want it to be that it's your fault, you failed, you weren't a good mother, and that's why it turned out that way? And here's the thing, I don't know a mother, and I have never met, really in all the years that I've been a therapist, I have never yet met a mother who did not get up in the morning and do whatever it took for her children. I don't know anyone who didn't. I know everyone who did. And it went however it went. But there is no way that I've ever met a mother, or a father for that matter, who didn't do whatever it took. You know? And so I wrote this story for a reason. It was because the mother actually didn't do anything. You know, that part of psychology where you're supposed to blame your parents, that was actually not written for the public. It was written to train therapists how to get to the roots of what happened to the patient. But as with other things and with the publication of books, everybody now has knowledge to how we're supposed to be trained. So now everybody goes around blaming their parents, thinking that's even valid. Your parents never messed you up. They did whatever they did. And how I know is in any single family, you will find the ones who are a mess, and then you will find the ones who are perfect. So how come they have the same parents then? And I know to whom I speak, yes? Because If you were a bad parent, then all your kids should turn out messed up. They don't. So I know it has nothing to do with you. Which is why it's so important in our work, but I've made it a mission for me, that people ask their parents for forgiveness. You know how we have in modern psychology how you're supposed to go home from your therapy sessions and tell your parents everything they did wrong? How they messed you up, right? And the therapist charges you money to mess up your family? Some people big bucks, right? For years, yes? And then you go home. I mean, I had those therapists, you know, and then you go home and you blame the whole world for all your problems. And somehow those problems never go away and they never get solved. And you think, maybe I didn't blame them enough. So you go back for another session. Then you go back and blame your parents some more. It still doesn't solve the problem. Then you blame other people. Maybe the brother did it. Maybe, you know, the neighbor did it. Maybe the friend in high school. I kid you not, I had some girl call me, a classmate of mine, after
30 years?
30 years or so. 33 years, never mind my age. And she told me how me yelling at her in the schoolyard had really messed up her whole life. Her whole life, and she's been in years of therapy trying to solve it. I was speechless. Right? Can you get? We're looking for anyone to blame. Now, what's really profound about this story is when you follow it, you see, like you really look. And when she was 4, that relationship was perfect. Because life hadn't touched her. And life touches us all. Something happens. Anything could happen to anyone in life. And then if you feel ashamed or you feel bad, you hide. And then it just builds. And so all that to say, you may want to go easy on yourself, and that at some point, your little girl also is going to have to own it, that this was her life, and these were her lessons, and that really no one is to blame, and that she's 100% responsible for whatever happened in her life. You know, and you and many mothers have to wait until their kids get way past adolescent for that to happen, yes.
Well, and here's the thing. You don't get, as long as you have one of these, a physical body, you're not going to get through life without getting hurt.
Yes.
It's like you're not going to get through life without being wounded, without getting your feelings hurt, without being offended, without getting injured in some way or another. It doesn't happen. And if it did, you're living way too safe of a life. You're not living, you're just staying alive. If you're really living, you're going to go out and take risks, fall down, get hurt, get back up, and go some more. You know, it's called, in the Honor, Integrity, and Mastery, we talk about mastery as being correct and continue. Mm-hmm. You don't just keep doing the same thing. You correct, and then you continue. So, you know, you get hurt, you correct, and continue. That's what mastery is. It's all that. Right. It's just like noticing what didn't work, and don't do that again. Mm-hmm. Do something else. That might not work either, but then don't do that again. And you just keep going until you see what works and what doesn't work. And you get good at what works over time, and you begin to master your life. But like we said, pain is unavoidable. Suffering is voluntary. Suffering is the ongoing participation in pain.
Right.
Pain, 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 pain. You've done everything except the one thing that would stop the pain. In most cases, you've tried everything, but you haven't done that thing which would stop the pain.
No.
And so you are indulging in a kind of ongoing suffering, which in and of itself, you might want to listen to this, is very, very addictive. When you're in an emotional, psychological, spiritual, or even physical pain, there's all sorts of neuropeptides that are bathing your system and your neurology, and those neuropeptides have receptors, or else they wouldn't affect you. Yes? There's little keys. It's like a key. There's like a lock and a key that fits it, right? Those neuropeptides that tell to feel bad, tells you to feel sad, depressed, ashamed, they're neuropeptides. They're chemicals for all intents and purposes that tell you to feel that way. And those chemicals are very, very addictive. It's like heroin, right? And you can become habitually bummed out. And you will even find things that you know are going to bum you out and go do them. Call his number and listen to his voice, or, you know, all those things that people do, or go do that thing that you know every time you do that, you're just a wreck about it, but you go do that.
Right.
How do we celebrate birthdays?
Shopping.
Right? No, well, women, you know, 21st birthday, what'd you do? You went out and like did all kinds of things to your body that you felt terrible about the next day, right? Most people did, anyhow. In my gang, that's what you did. You like went and got really drunk, and felt really like crap the next day, and hey, let's go do that some more.
Right.
It's very addictive.
So in looking at the young girl, yes, is there anything else that comes to your mind? And this is really also a question for the men. Is there anything that comes to mind that you think to yourself, wow, that's like me, that's my experience, that's my relationship with my parents, or that's my relationship with my mom, or that's my relationship in my life? And it doesn't have to be the men. I'm just saying,
We'd
who
love to hear
relates
from the
to
men, is what we're really
story
saying.
in terms of relationships to your parents, or more stories about relationships with yourself?
Hello. Can I talk?
Yes.
Yeah, I had the experience like that too, and I had some problems with drugs, and I was hiding it, and I didn't feel good about it, so I started talking about it, and I opened up to my mother and told her what's going on, and it helped a lot.
It might help to bring the mic up a little. Yeah.
Is it better now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after talking to her about these problems that I have and hiding from her, something opened up for me that gave me that strength to get away from it. So by doing that, I didn't need to hide it anymore. So I didn't have to hide it from her and deal with it by myself. So I had somebody that was actually on my side and was helping me, and that helped me a lot. And
Wow.
that's my story.
That's
Our
a lot of
mother's
fun.
awesome. They always forgive you.
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Oh my God, that's great. What a story. Yeah. Great.
I don't know if I can guarantee that from your dad, but
Right. Yeah. Anyone else with an experience about parents and relationships and what went on in your relationship with your parents? A story of what it was like, and it could be the opposite of what we're sharing, yes? If there's anything you wanted to say.
well, here's the thing.
Yes.
Yes.
One more point.
Yeah.
Just have a question that
Yes.
I have a 10-year-old son, and I want to know, he's very open with me.
Yeah.
So he's 10. But I want this to be continued for the rest of his life. And how do I have to behave with him that he keeps be open up with me?
Great.
Yeah.
That's a great question, because I think every parent is challenged by that, yes? And it's an interesting line, and of course, Azita will have a lot to say about it. My experience is that mothers the feminine energy. The feminine energy is in the world and is here to teach us how sweet life can be, how gracious life is, how nourishing life can be. Life is good, yes? Mm-hmm. And with a mother and her child, life is good, you know? Life is good. And so I believe that as boys or girls, with our mothers, life is good, you know? And I believe that is as it should be. And with fathers, I believe, are here to sort of teach us that life can be tough. You better be prepared for it. You might have to toughen up. Fathers may say no. You know, fathers may say straighten up. Fathers may be disciplinarians sometimes. Doesn't mean the mother can't be a disciplinarian, but I believe, my personal belief is that her role is to be the generous one, the forgiving one, the one that is always expansive, even when she wants to contract. Mm-hmm. You know, she's able to expand into the situation and be accepting, like, I love you no matter what. You know, I can't tolerate or condone this behavior, but I love you no matter what. Maybe you've made a mistake and you need to go fix it. I will support you and be there for you. Whereas a father might say, you're in trouble, right? You know, now you're gonna have to deal with me, you know? And I believe that sometimes it's his job to make it more unpleasant to deal with father than it is to go face the situation. I'd rather, you know, there are a lot of times where I would just rather do the right thing than have to deal with my father, who I knew was not going to approve. Yes? I don't know if this helps you in terms of, but being forgiving and letting them know that no matter what, I love you, I accept you, and I know you'll make some mistakes, and I believe in you, I trust you, and I've taught you everything I know about being a good person. And I know that you're going to go use that to have a good life and be a good person. Don't let me down, you know?
We're so different. I'm such a practical, hands-on
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I believe children should have responsibilities. I also believe that children should know that you are not their personal happiness slave. That what is necessary is that you are not here to find every opportunity to make them happy. This is not your job. Their job is to be happy on their own and to make sure that you are happy with them. If your children think that it is their happiness that you're supposed to provide all the time, and that if you don't provide them with happiness, that they're somehow going to punish you with being unhappy, then that is what they will do. And so when it comes to children, I seriously believe that they need to learn responsibility. Let's say around the age of 10, they need to begin to think that they don't live in a hotel and that you are not the driver, the bank, the cook, the dishwasher, you know, the maid. It's all for them, and their job is only to go to school, study, and play with their friends. What an unrealistic way to bring up your children. Really? I wish my life was like that. I could just, you know, have nothing to do except take care of myself. So I suggest that children wake up in the morning realizing that what there is to do is clean up my room. What there is to do is clean up my bed. What there is to do is be responsible for waking myself up, actually. Because my school isn't to make someone else happy, it's for my future. You know? And so those things, making them think of how their own happiness is their own business, and also that their happiness comes from doing good, by being responsible, and by earning the things that they have, that it's not just given to them. I don't know that kids respect us if everything they want is provided for them. I don't think we would respect our parents if everything we wanted was just given to us. I certainly think and believe in limiting toys. Once a year, you gather the toys and give them to those who need them if they're not needed. You know, so there are things that you can do that will earn their respect. because their love is important, and that will come in time when they realize that you've done right by them. But I do believe also that their respect is important, that there be respect, and that they see their parents as somebody who's teaching them to feel good about themselves by being good, by having responsibility, by realizing that my being responsible in my future life comes from being responsible now. My answer to you would be how you continue that is by allowing him to now earn the privilege of being with you and being in that house and having the things that he has and not taking them for granted. I also think that you need to perhaps deal with the fact that no matter what you do, he's going to make his own choices. And that teenage years are very difficult years where we make choices, and sometimes those choices are to really get away from our families. But that if the formative years have been done correctly, that we do come back, as we have, most of us.
Any more questions about this?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yes.
Regarding the story, I think she was finally free because she also was able to forgive herself regarding being raped and being molested.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you feel guilty, after a while, your perception becomes your reality.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the points that she was able to be free and happy and move on was because she forgave herself. And as far as a personal story is concerned, I was in the 4th year of medical school, when I went to Iran to visit my mother. And one day I left the house, went back home, and she was dead.
Oh.
And I felt guilty for at least 5 years. And I suffered because I thought it was my fault. If I hadn't left the house that day, I could be home and saved her. So it took me 5 years of really hard time. And then I realized if it was time for her to go, it was time for her to go. And I felt obligated to forgive myself. And after that, I've been free.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you
Wow.
for sharing that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So important what you brought up, so crucial, because the shame that binds us has to do with there's something so wrong with me that if I ever told anyone, that they would never want to be around me. And so by continuing that shame, by continuing the cycle of secrecy, of never letting anyone see what's happened, you keep, or we keep as human beings, we keep the cycle going, reinforcing that there really is something wrong and I should hide it.
Yeah. I think it's important here to distinguish between shame and guilt. Most people have them collapse together as if they were the same thing, and they're very, very different. Guilt is, I have done something that does not meet my own standards. The standards that I've accepted. They may have been imposed upon me from the outside, these standards. Very often they are, but I've accepted them. And now I've done something that is beneath those standards. Now what there is to do with guilt is correct it. I did something wrong, go fix it. Clean it up, admit it, make amends, go back to the source and go. Sometimes, like the girl in the story, there's nothing to do but to share it. When you share your inner reality with another, another that will not judge or evaluate or criticize or blame or add guilt to your scenario, to your story, to your sharing, but somebody who will simply get it. Wow, that happened for you. Wow, I really get it. They let it in. When you share your inner reality with another person, what happens? the charge on it disappears.
Yeah.
The charge on it disappears because we hardly ever have a problem with what actually happened. What happened, we didn't like it, it was unpleasant, it felt bad. I hope I never have to have that again, whatever. But what really the ongoing suffering is about, you know, I talked about you can't avoid pain, but you can avoid ongoing suffering. The ongoing suffering is always about the meaning and the story and the beliefs and attitudes that you have added to what happened. The significance, there's where the charge is. The emotional charge, the bad feelings, the reoccurring self-doubt comes from the meaning that you have added to what happened. What happened just is what happened. You got raped, you know? And really, if you got right down to it, you had sex and you didn't want to, you know? And you know, I don't like it. I hope it never happens again. Too bad. Correct and continue. I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm not going to get myself in that situation. Okay, correct and continue. Is there any story about that? Oh, okay, so that's guilt. Guilt is I did something, I go back and I handle whatever it is that I need to handle, and I sort myself out about that, and I make whatever amends I can. Shame is something entirely different. Shame is a story about you. Shame is I'm not good enough, I'm a bad person, I'm horrible, I'm no good, I'm unlovable. I am not worthy of the love and acceptance of the people that I love and admire. I'm not worthy to be a part of my peer group or my family. I'm unlovable. That's shame. Is shame true? It's a story. It's what you said. You added that. Did they say that?
And it can really be about anything. I mean,
you didn't even give them an opportunity to say that.
Right. But shame could be about anything. It doesn't even have to be something really horrible.
Right.
It could be about, you know, something really simple, but then you hide it. And the minute you hide it, it becomes this big thing that if somebody found out, wow, what would happen, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So then it gets built up to be something really important, when, as just like Gregory said, it may not have been something really great.
And the truth is, your standards and ideals, those things that are like, wow, the perfect ideal, always came from failures to be that. You idealize what you have failed to be.
Right.
At
so
some
then
point in your
shame
life, you've had
becomes there's something wrong with you, and guilt becomes you did something wrong.
Now, here's what's cool about that. There's a positive side to that. Sometimes you're so ashamed, or you're so, I'll just use the word ashamed, that you actually go for this ideal. Now, the ideal's no more, you know, it's an idealized version of reality, but you go for this ideal, and you develop abilities and strengths that actually become strong points in your personality, strong points in your character. And in order to compensate for this failure that you had in the past, you idealize something and then you reach for it. And you actually become a better person for reaching for this ideal. So there's actually sometimes a positive side to that. You know, I did something when I was a kid. I stuck my brand new pocket knife that I just got from my father into an electric socket to unplug the Christmas tree. You know, it's like my sister couldn't unplug the Christmas tree, and I said, I'll get it, right? And I melted the knife, I electrocuted myself, I set the tree on fire, I knocked it over on the couch, and all the lights in the house went out. You know, it fell on my sister. Our parents were at home, and you know, we're laying there in the dark, and I'm like electrocuted, and you know, a little fire is spurting out of the electric socket, and she said, "You are so stupid." And I was ashamed of that, and I spent my lifetime, I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it, figuring out how everything works and how I know more stuff about, Azita calls me a walking encyclopedia. I know how light bulbs, I know how everything works now. You know, and what I don't know, I read books on physics and everything to figure it out. So it's kind of a strong point, but it could, you know, it's not maybe my most charming aspect, but it turned out all right. All to make up for a 7-year-old who got convinced in a very real way that he was really stupid, you know, and plus reinforced with an electric shock. Sometimes you get anchored in something and then you set out to prove that that's not true about yourself. However, it will never, ever, ever bring you happiness.
And so the point being that, as you said, freedom is what comes when you take the risk of sharing with another person that which you feel ashamed of. But also, you said something really important about your mom and blaming ourselves for things that happen outside of our control. And, you know, certainly a lot of what you have shared in here and what's in the story is things that people may not be able to control in life. Or they think they're dealing with it the right way. Yes? And then we end up in a trap. And then we don't want to tell anybody, this is what happened to me, or these are the mistakes I made, because what are they going to think of me? And just like the little girl, at some point. The point of the story being that how do we actually free ourselves? And then also that your relationship with your mother is a key to your self-acceptance. That relationship in which you reconnect with where you came from, and knowing that you can say anything to her, to this person who was your childhood God, right? Who we all think of our mothers as the answer to everything. She is it. She's the all beautiful, the all warm, the all fuzzy, she comes with everything. Yes? And so to turn against that is to turn against yourself. And why this story is so important is that reconnection is the healing. And so then the question comes up, well, how do I reconnect if my parent has passed away? Or how do I reconnect? It is easy at any time to reconnect with that. What there is to do is to be in the presence of that energy and that person, and that you take responsibility, that you say, thank you for being my mother. Thank you for giving me life. Thank you for all the goodness that you gave to me, that I have become who I am today, that I am proud of who I am today. And there are certain things that I have been hiding or not telling you or not sharing with you that I would like to open up so I can be free of them.
Whatever happened to that little girl? What is she doing now?
The little girl who connected with her mom found through that relationship that what there is to do is teach other women how to connect with their moms and with the men in their lives. And that instead of coming home and telling everybody how terrible it is to be in relationship with men, celebrating her relationship with the man in her life with the whole world, and letting people know that all of those things that could happen to a person should never be a reason to be held back in life. And that the whole world could know the worst things about you, perhaps, or the biggest challenges that you've had, and the whole world will still love you. And that's how loving and accepting the world is. But just like my mom said, you have to be right with yourself first. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for your generosity.
Yes.